Despite weeks of bombing, Libya's Colonel Gaddafi went on television again today, refusing to give up power or leave the country. He repeated past calls for a ceasefire and said he would negotiate if NATO stops its planes. He was speaking early this morning on Libyan state TV.
They talk about ceasefires. We were the first ones to welcome the ceasefire idea. We were the first ones to agree to ceasefire. But did NATO stop its Crusader airstrikes? They did not stop. Who would stop them?
Rebel spokesman rejected Colonel Gaddafi's offer, saying it lacked credibility. And fighting has continued for control of the western city of Misrata. The city has been under siege for several weeks, and the only access is by the port. NATO says government forces have laid mines on the approach to the harbour, forcing a temporary halt in humanitarian aid shipments. Our chief correspondent Alex Thomson is in the city and has been to the Al-Hekma hospital to see rebel fighters and civilians brought in from around the city. A warning, his report includes distressing scenes of injured people, including children, and very powerful images as doctors try to save their lives.
The reverberation and the smoke had gone on for hours. We walked to Hikma Hospital, and already the wounded were arriving. Coming first to this tent, Hikma's reception area, their A&E perhaps. And here, a fighter with internal injuries, but conscious, defiant. Seconds later, another fighter shot through the left leg. The homemade tourniquet is released. Pray to Allah, says the doctor. Just keep praying to Allah. You look up, and suddenly 6-year-old Ahmed has arrived with a bullet in his neck. But more wounded are coming in all the time, patched up at immediate first aid posts around Misrata. One bandaged up with the rebel flag. It is true that the fighting has finished in the centre of this city, but there is fierce fighting going on today on the southern fringes, on the western suburbs, and in the south by the airport still held by Colonel Gaddafi's forces. And the results of that are plain to see in this, the triage area of the hospital. It's basically an air-conditioned tent in the car park. But little Ahmed is still here, staring out. Though the doctors find he can move his fingers, the great fear, paralysis through neck trauma, is slightly diminished. They examine his wound, and another little boy looks on, seeing things here that no child should ever have to see.
We have received a lot of injured people today, and it's actually a bad day because you have seen a lot of kids today are injured, and one of them is dead, and we don't know what's going to happen to the other kids. So at least emotionally, it's a very, very, very bad day.
But Dr. Omar has to go, part of another urgent trauma team assembling for Mufta Omar. The screens show there is life, but fingertip massage of a young heart begins. A few feet away, Ahmed, bullet still in his neck, is out to surgery. But back with Mufta, ultrasound is used to try and reveal the track of a bullet through his body. He's been here for just over 7 minutes now. Fingertip heart massage has become full hand massage. The nurses look on, fearing the worst. A second doctor takes over. Almost 14 minutes have passed now. A third doctor tries. And a fourth as 17 minutes pass. They go on, 7 changes, 4 doctors, ever more frantic and fearful. For almost half an hour, they do not give up, trying to bring Mufta back. The only sign of injury is a small bullet wound in his shoulder. But after almost 35 minutes, they realize They just cannot restart this little boy's life. Mufta Omar was 5 years old. For Dr. Omar and colleagues, just a few minutes, if they're lucky, to try and regroup.
I can't say we get used with this because you cannot get used with little kids die every day. But we have to manage this because we don't have, even for the injured people, they don't have another place to go. They have to come here, so we have to deal with this every day. And we cannot leave the hospital just for an emotional feeling. You have to continue doing your work because these are your family and these are your people. So you have to manage.
There is no respite for the doctors. The makeshift ambulances just keep coming. A fighter with headphones, ear defenders for the noise of battle. The drips, the blood bags, the oxygen masks are waiting. At least 20 fighters have been killed here every day for the past few days. Scores more have appalling injuries. Alex Thomson, Channel 4 News, Misrata.
Well, for the latest, I spoke to Alex earlier in Misrata.
Well, now, I don't want to give the impression that life is like that in the hospital just up the road from here all day, every day, but it is like that for several hours of every day. The attrition here is intense. Although it's true Colonel Gaddafi's forces have been pushed out of the town, they are shelling it and using rocket-propelled grenades from that direction, which is the east, from that direction, which is the south, and from that direction, which is the west, which leaves only that direction to the north as the way out of here. By sea.
Well, if the sea's the only way out, what is the latest on boats getting in?
All day, the only vessel which can take the last few migrant workers, several hundred of them, desperately needing to leave, the only boat that can take them out has been resting at anchor 12 miles offshore. They need to talk to NATO. They need to get permission to come in here, that it's safe to do so. Two reasons for this. One, shelling around the port area itself, which continues sporadically. And secondly, the fact that NATO found Colonel Gaddafi's forces attempting to plant sea mines. And that's been added to by Colonel Gaddafi overnight, saying that any vessel entering or leaving Misrata port will be treated as a target and attacked. Our latest understanding is that that ferry is still offshore.